Hi, this is Coach Keita Bussey with 180 Firearms Training, joined today by Grant Chancellor Madison and Ibrahim. I'll let you say your last name so I don't mess it up. How do you say your
Ibrahim
full name?
Ndungu. Ibrahim Ndungu from Kenya.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to the 180 Firearms Training podcast. So Ibrahim, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
My name is Ibrahim Ndungu. I'm a master shooter in IDPA, and I'm Class B shooter in IPSC. I joined USPSA 2 days ago, and I'm looking forward to shoot at a trail as well.
So you got to run outside the lines for the first time.
Yes, I want to try to stay out of demarcation for a while to do shortcuts. Yeah.
And did you enjoy that?
I started yes, but I'm looking forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you have nationals coming up in Kenya.
Yes,
for
we have our
IPSC.
first national. Yes, we have our first IPSC level 3 national. It's our first champion match. It's coming up in June 18th and 19th. It's 2 days shoot, 18 stages.
Okay, and you've recently also competed in South Africa at their nationals, correct?
Yeah.
How did that go?
The first match I participated in South Africa, it was last year. I think it was in May. Sorry, it's on in March last year. I think I was number 60 something also. And then I came. It was my first IPSC match. Then I came back and trained a bit. Thank God, I came to find about 185 training. So after training. So the last match I participated, that was in February. I was among the top 10.
That is amazing. So
Yeah.
your previous nationals, you were around 60% or so in South Africa?
Yes, I think my first
this one you
I
were
was 63.
63%?
Yeah, 63%. Yeah.
Okay, and this last one you were around 85%?
I think it's 5 or 89%, something to closer to that. Yeah.
That is a huge jump. You've been training very hard.
It is, yeah. It's not about even training hard, because I didn't train hard. I think it's the correct training, the right training.
Yeah, so we started out, you contacted me and we did a video review. How was that for you? The video review?
Yeah, it helped me a lot, because I was doing so many mistakes without myself knowing. I've been training the long way. And also in terms of stage planning, I wasn't planning my stage the way I could save time. So most of the time I was just shooting the stage to complete the stage, but there was no efficiency. But now I'm able to, at least I'm able to economize my movement. I only move when I need to move, and I now move to shoot. I don't shoot to move.
Yes. So what you're doing now is letting your sights dictate your movement rather than your movement dictating your hits.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to add that Ibrahim has done basically this massive jump in percentage with what essentially is a carry gun. He's shooting a CZP-10C, which is short and really difficult and has a lot of recoil. So it's actually really impressive to see him run that gun the way he does.
Yeah, and you're very equipped with it too. So what were some of the things that you trained on? I sent you some drills based on what I saw in your videos. What were some of those things that you felt helped you the most?
The one that helped me a lot during the last national is after you introduced me on backing off from target, and also crossing over. Instead of stopping to shoot, now I'm able to shoot as I'm closing over, going to the
Shifting.
next shooting position. Yeah.
Yeah, so once you started shooting, backing out of position and started shifting your weight instead of coming to a dead stop,
Yeah.
significant time came off your stages.
Yes. Yes.
That was
I
very
felt
cool.
like I was slow. Yes, I felt like I was slow, but when I listened to the time, in fact, I was trying to argue. I would try to look for the timer to analyze the shots because I couldn't believe that.
Yeah, your times were very competitive and your stage plans
Yeah.
were very good at nationals as well. Even the top guys from South Africa were using your stage plans.
Yeah.
Yes, we did. We
Like-
did steal Ibrahim's stage. But stage one, you pointed something out that no one else saw, and we all stole your stage plan
Yeah, and stage three, and stage three as well.
as well. Yes, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All your
so
stage plans, actually.
basically you started continuing your momentum throughout the entire stage from beginning to end, not coming to dead stops. And you also started pumping your arms to help propel you.
Yeah.
That was a big difference.
Yeah, that's a big difference. Although I realized that I was overdoing it, as you pointed out in one of the in one of my training videos. So I'm still collecting that.
Yeah, so what happens when you first start pumping your arms is a lot of times it'll be over exaggerated too much,
Yeah.
full extension of the arm, but
Yeah.
then you can dial that back. I would rather see you exaggerate it at first than not do it,
Yeah.
but then dial that back so that it's a comfortable, natural movement.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a look at some of these stages from your upcoming match. So the first thing I do when I get a match book is look for anything that jumps out, anything that's different. You don't want to make your stage plans off of the match book because it's not ever going to be set up the same when you get there. So instead, I look for things like you have a chair start where the gun is unloaded on the table. So practicing running from the chair to your gun, loading it, and shooting. That would be something that would stand out to me, and that's something I would practice. And that is on stage 5. I think it was stage,
stage 5.
yes. Another thing with stage 5, they have walls pointed perpendicular to the fault lines. So that's easy to get sucked into and put your gun between those openings, and then you have to get back out again. So practicing that, staying back off the walls and not pulling in the gun, keeping it at full extension and just making it a transition as though the walls aren't even there. That's something else that is a skill you can work on leading into this match. And stage 10, I believe, has a low port. So then I would practice shooting through a low port, moving into it, moving out of it. Those are the only 2 things that really jumped out at me as, okay, these are things you should probably work on leading into this match.
And if the stage number 10, would you prefer, because the start position is anywhere, would you prefer to start with the right target and then end with the low port, or you can start with the low port?
Well, again, you want to see it on the ground. But that being said, it's usually best to end on the low port. That way you're not going down and then up again. That adds more movement. If you end on the low port, then you only go down, not down and up.
Yeah.
So that's what I would do.
Yeah, I'm asking this because I remember he had advised me to always always shoot from left to right or clockwise instead of if you are right-hand shooter instead of anti-clockwise.
Now, this is something interesting. Moving right to left as a right-handed shooter with a pistol is actually faster than moving left to right, as long as there's no reload. Because when you're pumping your arms, you can just pump your arms really naturally without worrying about sweeping yourself. If you're moving to the right, then you have the gun high and your other arm low, so you're not
Yeah.
sweeping yourself. And it's much more natural to run to the left. But of course, then if you have a reload, that makes it a little bit more challenging. So
Yeah.
you should be able to do both, and it should be equally fast either way if you practice it, even with the reload. Making sure you're able to do both things. So yes, I would still move right to left, even with a reload.
Yeah.
Because I practice reloads moving right to left and I'm comfortable doing them. And that does eliminate that vertical movement going down and then up rather than just going down.
You made me do that as well, so I'm comfortable reloading either side.
I made you do that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
So-
looking at that stage, I think the person who's going to win it is the one who flows through the steel and shoots the steel on the move.
Yeah.
So that's what I would focus on when training for that particular stage. Not so much the going into the low port. I think that's relatively simplistic to end on, but yeah, if you want to save time, a lot of people probably stop, shoot at the
Yes.
steel, and then move.
Of course, you have to see how difficult the target is and match that with your skill level and figure out what you can do. But even if you
Yeah.
can just be shifting your weight a little bit without dragging your sights across the target, keep the sights still on the target while your body is moving. Even that little bit of a shift is going to give you an advantage over someone who comes to a dead stop.
That's how you create difficulty in stage design.
Yeah, that's
not just putting the target
well-done
far
stage.
away, because a lot of
Yeah,
people
that's-
seem to think like, let's make it difficult. Let's put the targets far away. Yay, we have created an difficult stage. No,
Yeah.
you've just been lazy.
Ibrahim, tell everyone the other interesting thing about this match that jumped out to you. What is odd about the stages? What are they missing?
Well, they're missing the swingers and moving target and reactive target.
Yes, so it's only paper and steel and a lot of no shoots.
Yes, yeah, and a lot of no shots here.
So it's
Yeah.
going to be very important to
Yeah.
find your spot on each target and program your
Yeah.
eyes to go to the right spot before you shoot. That visualization is going to be big. And if you have to reset a target, do you have people reset targets for you in Kenya, or do you reset them?
Pardon, I didn't get that.
Do you reset your own targets? After somebody shoots, do you go put a patch on the target?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So if you have to patch a white target, a no shoot,
Yeah.
make sure before you walk away, you reprogram your spot, because when you put that patch on there on the white, now you just programmed your eyes to go to that spot. So before you walk away, reprogram your spot you want to look at.
Yeah, I didn't know that it worked that way, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's mental, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
You go where you look and you just trained your eyes to go to that spot because you put a patch on it.
Yes.
So now you have
the
to
last target,
retrain.
it's the last target you saw.
Exactly. Anything jump out to you, Grant?
There's a couple standard shoots like stage 17 and 18, which, I mean, if you start stage 1, that's probably a nice way to end the match with some 9-round speed shoots. The one thing that does jump out at me is that I mean, it's your first nationals, and that's a lot of stages for the first nationals. You're shooting 9 stages a day. I think that's, I don't know, I think that's a bit too much. I think everyone's by the end of, or by halfway through the second day, a lot of people are going to be very tired, especially with all the movement that you guys have on the stages. So match fitness is definitely a thing, and it's going to basically come down to who's match fit, and you'll see maybe guys will start out, there won't be a huge split between, you know, the top 10, but I think as the day goes, you'll start to see people drop off and start throwing no shoots and mics.
The mental fatigue.
Yeah, I think that's going to happen. But there are some where you have a whole bunch of steel plates and they're pretty far. So I would shoot those with just intent to take one shot at the steel. Because what a lot of guys are going to do is also they're going to try and settle their sights on, shoot at the target, especially if it's a 25 meter far away steel plate, which is on stage 17.
Yeah.
So you got two 25-meter steel plates and a 20-meter target. So a lot of guys are going to shoot at the steel, wait for the ding, realize they didn't hear the ding, and then shoot it again.
I like how you say shoot at the steel.
Shoot at the steel. So my intention with that would be, I'm going to get one good sight picture, one good trigger press, and I'm going to, once the sight lift, move to the next target and do that on all the steel. And then only after I've shot the entire array, come back and scan and see, okay, well, are they all down? And if you connect, then it's going to be a very fast time. And that's what you want to get on something like that.
A
If you don't
really
connect,
common,
well, shoot at it again.
a really common mistake that people make is think, I'm going to go 1 for 1 on the steel. Instead of thinking to yourself, I'm going to go 1 for 1 on the steel, you have to instead think, I'm going to program my spot on every steel. And like Grant said, I'm going to get a good sight picture, pull the trigger straight. So you're visualizing, finding that spot, seeing the sight picture you need to see, pulling the trigger straight before you ever shoot it. That's the thing that will help you go 1 for 1. If you think go 1 for 1, then it's going to put extra pressure on yourself, because as you get closer and closer to the last one, and you start to think to yourself, I'm going 1 for 1, and then you miss.
Yeah, so that's what does jump out at me. I mean, it's really interesting. I think there's a lot of flowy stage designs, which it's nice. Some people just don't like positional matches. This is definitely, I mean, there's some positions where you're going to have to stop hard on them, but maybe it's a case of this match is catered more towards someone who likes to flow through positions. Not a lot of variance on that. But it does look like an interesting match. I'd quite like to shoot this if I was.
It does look fun.
If I was around.
Interesting. You remember the match we did in December?
Yes, that was the nationals.
It was a match. Yeah, it was match for heavyweight.
Yes,
all the heavyweight guys won in their categories because there was no movement.
Yeah. It was the guys who had optics on their guns and the guys who were shooting major power factor. That was the match for them, and that was too far on the side of interest. So for me, I really didn't enjoy that match.
I did it. I did not as well.
Going back to what Grant said.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Going back to what you said earlier, Grant, with mental fatigue, having it be such a long day and 2 days in a row, I find that around 10 o'clock in the morning is when people start to get hungry and don't realize why they're forgetting what they're doing or getting that mental fatigue. So at 10 o'clock a.m., make sure you're snacking. Another common mistake is eating too much at lunchtime. So then all of the blood from your brain goes into your stomach, and it makes it harder to think and process. And you sort of get out of your match flow. So making sure to snack at 10 a.m. At lunchtime, don't overeat, just have just enough. And then I also see around 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, people start to lose their ability to maintain focus. They start drifting away. And that's usually a good time, if you're a caffeine drinker, to have a little bit of caffeine. If you don't normally have caffeine, then that's not something you want to do, because then you'll start to get the shakes.
I
But if you do,
I forgot to make it.
and you don't want to overdo the caffeine, or you will start to shake, but just a little
don't
bit
do
around
Red
2
Bull.
o'clock in the afternoon, if you are used to caffeine.
Yeah.
Well, Ibrahim,
So-
I gave you, we had some specific snacking things we did on our 3-day training where you want to talk about that?
Unfortunately, we don't have them in Kenya.
And
We don't
you
have biltong?
Red Bull.
We don't have biltong in Kenya.
Oh,
Oh.
no.
Dang.
Well, we only have beef jerky and it's like chewing on leather. It's horrible.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
Yeah,
but
but they made a lot of difference. Remember the first day we trained, we did not do any snacking. I was so tired I couldn't. After two hours I couldn't concentrate. But the following day I couldn't even realize that it was almost 2 p.m.
Yes, so it's very important to have some sort of a protein, some sort of a fat. The fat gives you energy. And then some sort of a complex carbohydrate, no simple sugars, stay away from sugar. But you do need electrolytes.
yeah, so
Complex
training.
carbohydrates do break down into sugar, but it's released gradually. So it helps maintain a steady blood sugar level.
Okay. So would you recommend fruits, natural fruits?
So those do give you a lot of sugar. That would be fine. I would think around that 10 a.m. mark.
Yeah.
When I was saying that's usually when people forget to snack. In the morning, it's okay, but in the afternoon, it's not going to work as well for you. I would do maybe 10 o'clock in the morning if you have a little bit of fruit, that's okay. Or some dried fruit mixed in with nuts. But if you just have the fruit, it's a lot of sugar. You need something that's going to stick with you longer, like a complex carbohydrate or some protein will last longer and have that with the fruit. Otherwise, you'll have a blood sugar drop and you'll bottom out.
Did you mention cornflakes?
Some what?
Did you mention cornflakes?
Cornflakes?
Yeah.
Yeah, those would be okay. As long as they're not the sugar-coated ones.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be a carbohydrate.
Yeah.
And then have
also
that
forgot-
with an apple or something.
I also forgot to mention, in the location where the match is being held, it's normally too hot. It goes up to 36 degrees. And the sun is very hot.
60, that's about 130, 135 Fahrenheit for the American viewers. That's hot.
It's hot, yeah.
Yeah, and I know that you talked about wearing gloves because it does get so hot. And we mentioned the problem with wearing gloves is you don't have that direct contact with the firearm. I have seen situations where people have a medical condition and their hands just pool sweat. And I've seen those guys wear gloves when they shoot. But for the most part, I would recommend sticking to some sort of a pistol pro grip or talc powder or something like that so that you have that direct contact. Basically, if you have a layer in between your hand and the gun, it's separating your hand from the gun and you don't have as much surface area to grip, if that makes sense. What do you think about that, Grant?
Yeah, I mean, when it was super cold, I try and keep gloves on my hands. Definitely don't like to shoot with them. Also, I mean, most of the guns nowadays have such a aggressive texture on the grips because you want it to bite. You want it to bite your hand, and mix that with any kind of liquid chalk. I know there's a couple, brands. I do like Pro Grip now that I've tried it, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. But yeah, the liquid chalk stuff does work. And if you are sweating a lot, I think just wiping your hands and applying that just before you shoot should mitigate that. But again, shooting 60-degree heat, I'm assuming it's a very dry heat. There's no moisture in there at all.
Sorry, it's not 60, it's 36. 36.
Oh, 36.
Yeah, it's about 90, about 96 Fahrenheit. Yeah.
But it's still pretty hot. I've never shot in that kind of heat. So, I mean, it'll be an interesting thing to try. But I think with just wiping your hands and Pro Grip and or liquid chalk, I think that would actually work out fine. Just keep two towels with you, one that's going to get wet and one to dry your hand.
Yeah, I would definitely stay away from gloves. It's just harder to be accurate, and it's harder to grip aggressively with the glove on. That's what I've seen. So we did something.
I'm working on that.
I know it's different for you. So something interesting we did, because I'm in America and Grant was in South Africa and you're in Kenya. We did online coaching. We did the video reviews. I sent you drills to do with my little Lego guys. And then you went and trained with Grant, who has taken my class and trained with me before and was able to show you and demonstrate these things where I couldn't do that from where I am. So that was really interesting that you were able to do that. What did you think about that?
I noted some of the drills that you sent me. I was doing them incorrectly. So that's where Grant came in handy. So I benefited a lot. The 2 times I've gone to South Africa to train with Grant. And online, it's good, but you learn more when you are with the instructor on the range, because he or she can see the mistake that you're doing and can correct them immediately. Yes, instead of perfecting the long technique here.
Right, that immediate feedback is so useful, and I think online coaching is really beneficial and it's easier, but definitely need to check in with some in-person coaching as well. I wouldn't do just online coaching. It's just not enough.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool.
And that's why you are expecting you to come to Kenya.
Yes, that would be amazing.
Yeah, you didn't mention that when you're introducing 185.
Yes, so 180 firearms training coming to Kenya, doing a smart move class, and then we'll advance to the train smart class and do some vision training and things like that. We'll talk about how to create your own training plan as well, rotate through all those skills. So typically you don't want to practice the same thing over and over again. You want to keep rotating through all the different skills so they come up as a whole. Somebody described it to me as when you're playing that game where you keep a balloon off the ground, you know, the balloon's filled with air and you're hitting it so it doesn't touch the ground. And there's a name of a skill on each balloon. And you're trying to keep them all in the air and keep them from touching the ground.
Yeah.
So that's sort of how we rotate through our skills. Yeah, even within the same training session, you can shoot the same drill, but shoot it in a different way, change something from one run to the next. So you're not doing the exact same thing every time. Yeah. That helps you with retention.
Yeah, but I like how you're sending me a few drills to do, and I like how you training me one thing at a time. It really helped me to get the training into my muscle memory.
Yeah, so that's when it's okay to do one thing at a time, is when it's a brand new skill. Yeah. So if you're learning a brand new skill, you have to do the same thing over and over until you're able to do it. Once you're able to do it, now you do that juggling act and it gets thrown in with all the balloons.
Yeah, and once you try and you pick up a bad habit, you try and work it out, and by working out that bad habit, you create another bad habit. So it's a constant trying to just get rid of bad habits, creating new bad habits.
Yeah, anytime you fix one thing, something else breaks.
Yeah.
Constant maintenance.
Ibrahim, do you have any questions for us regarding the coaching you've received?
I have a question on small stages.
Okay. Activator sequences?
Sorry?
Activator sequences, you mean? or
No, the small stages. I realize because I'm a speed shooter. I shoot I shoot very quick, but I realize on small stages I need to be more accurate than on the big stages. The big stages, even if I get a mic or two mics, it doesn't matter. But I realize that if I get a mic on a small stage, even a delta, it's bring down my hit factor from it was supposed to be 9, bring down up to 5 or between 5 and 6. So I was asking, is there a formula to shoot a medium stage, small stage, and large stage? Where do you need to balance?
yeah,
Where's the balance between the medium, small and large stage, long stages?
well, the answer is it depends.
There you go again.
Yeah, the answer is always it depends. So what this is telling me is that your movement has gotten so good that you're able to make some mistakes, and your movement is doing so well that it's sort of absorbing some of those mistakes, where if you're doing a stand and shoot and you're not moving, movement is now an advantage for you.
To be sincere, I can, to be honest with you, the 3 local matches I've won here in Kenya, I've won them through through movement.
Congrats, man. Take the win.
Even the person that is following me, he has better scores than myself.
So the way I look at those, particularly the 9 and 12 round stages, I'm not good at them either. I'll fully admit that. I'm more of a medium and perhaps long stage shooter. That's what I do well in. The short stages, typically I'll always get beaten. Typically I'll always lose maybe 5 to 10 points to the person who's chasing me. What happens with those, the way I approach them is, I don't know if you've heard that before, but I have mentioned it. You won't win the match on that stage, but you can lose it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to know that I'm not going to win the stage. I'm going to basically try and mitigate the gains that my competitors can get. And the only way you can really do that is by shooting good points, unfortunately. So you need to kind of basically stop and slow down and say, okay, I'm just basically going to shoot alphas on this one only. I know we need to do that on every stage, but it's like especially the small stages. I'm going to lose maybe half a second or a second in time by guaranteeing that I have good sight pitches on target.
Yeah.
So that's how I approach those.
The best way to train for this is predicting hit factor. So you set up a stand and shoot stage in your practice, you predict what you think your hit factor is going to be, and then you shoot it and compare your actual hit factor to what you predicted you would do and see how close you were. And then you can play with numbers and say, okay, well, what if I had a mic but went this much faster? And then you push the speed and let the points drop a little bit and see what that hit factor is when you're just pushing for speed. Now, okay, I'm going to guarantee on my hits, I'll be a little bit slower, and then see what that hit factor is. And then you kind of start to see that balance. And I do have a formula for this. Did I send that to you? It's from my next book.
No, you haven't said that.
Okay, I can send you the formula. So I also account for potential time added. So I have a T+ section in the chart. So if you're doing a stand and shoot, the draw is one of those times you might lose 1/10 of a second or something like that. Or if there's a really wide transition, you might overswing and have to come back. Things like that. You're going to just figure out about how much you could potentially lose on each one of those challenges. And that's how you predict your hit factor. So
But
I
also,
can send you that formula.
Right. And psychologically also, Ibrahim, you need to also like, oh no, because you're going to get a lot of short stages in IPSC. I think you'll enjoy USPSA when like the smallest stage you're going to get is 19 rounds. So In IPSC, yes, you're going to get a lot of short stages. You can't necessarily look at them like, oh no, I'm terrible at these. You need to mentally prepare yourself and say, well, I'm going to get my hits. I'm going to guarantee good points on this stage. And if you start doing that, it'll start becoming less of an issue for you, rather than, I want to go fast.
Yeah, the biggest thing you can do, again, is programming your spot on each target, programming exactly where your eyes are going to go, and then thinking about pulling the trigger straight, making sure you nail your grip on the draw. You know, pick a thing that is going to make you successful. Don't just think go fast. Don't just think get all my hits. What thing can I do that will guarantee that happens?
But also, we're going to be training in October in South Africa again, right, Ibrahim?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, because you're going to the World Shoot.
Yes. I may come to South Africa, or I can invite you to come to Kenya, but we see which one works better. But in South Africa, ammunitions are cheap, so I prefer to come to South Africa.
Yes. So we're going to do some training, and I think hopefully we have the match book for the World Shoot by then. I don't know if we will. We can actually see just what kind of stages they're going to pull out of the hat, and we can train on those. But also, you touched on something. In Kenya, you don't reload.
Yes, we
and
don't
the
reload in
ammunition,
Kenya.
and the ammunition
Yes.
is about twice the price as South Africa.
That's correct.
So a lot of European countries seem to use that as a bit of, and I won't say excuse, to kind of like see that as a bigger issue than it really could be, where it's a case of, oh, well, ammunition's too expensive to train. What is your thoughts on that?
Apart from not being able to reload, we have a disadvantage on also, we, like yourself, you can determine your power factor. I cannot, because I'm shooting factory ammo. So I only shoot whatever is available by the power factor that is available by the
NATO spec high velocity ammo.
Yes,
Yeah.
unlike you guys, you can determine which or you can plan which power factor you need for your ammunition. So that's why most of the time you may find my shots, one go to alpha, the other one you go to Charlie, because my recoil and kickback is very heavy, because I shoot heavier ammunition. So another disadvantage is that you can't shoot too much or too many ammo because of the cost, because the cost is too high.
So
But
do you do more dry
with,
fire?
Sorry?
Do you do more dry fire than live fire?
I try to do dry fire, but I'm not very good at doing dry fire.
You've taken Steve Anderson's course though, right?
Yes, but I've never taken a dry fire course.
Steve Anderson does a dry fire course.
He does a dry fire tune-up.
Yeah, next time I'll take next time I'll take the course. In fact, I was to attend Steve Anderson course. It started on Friday. I think Friday up to Monday. But unfortunately, my passport is with Italian visa, with the Italian embassy, so I couldn't travel. So I'm hoping to travel on Thursday or Friday. Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Well, another thing you can do to make your dry fire more interesting is use blaze pods. So blaze pods light up, and when you tap one, another one lights up, and you don't know which one it's going to be. So those are cues for you, directing you what to do next. You can put them on the wall and set them to a random time, and whichever one lights up, that's the target you aim at. Or let's say you just have one on the wall set to a random time, it changes colors. Each color is a task that you will do. Let's say you're shooting freestyle when it's green, then it turns yellow and you go strong hand only. And then it turns blue and you go weak hand only.
Weak hand. Yeah, I can try that.
Yeah, it just keeps you more engaged in your dry fire and makes it more fun. It's more like a game.
But yeah, even with all the problems and not being able to train as much, you still have really excelled and gotten really, your skill levels improved so much so quickly. It's really impressive to see.
Yes, I was very impressed with the huge leap you took going from a 60-some% to an 80-some% in less than a year. Well, it was months.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was a matter of months.
Yeah.
How many months was that?
I think 9.
9 months.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
9 or 10.
Yeah, and your times were right on par with all the top guys.
Yeah.
And I know you
you
were.
Sorry.
I know you were focusing more on movement, and now it's always kind of that battle between speed and accuracy, but you were really focusing on the movement and getting your stage times to a competitive level. And now you're reining in the hits.
Time-wise, I think you
realized,
did beat us.
because I realized that I can train myself on accuracy, but I can't train myself on movement.
Yeah, that is very challenging.
Yeah, because if I want to do accuracy, I just need to see my sight and my sight picture.
Yeah, and once you're moving faster, all you have to do is make sure you see your sights.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I liked what you said earlier about how your sights are now dictating your movement instead of the other way around.
The other way around, yeah.
And you know what would help with that? A heavy gun.
Yeah.
You getting yourself an alien, right?
Yeah, I didn't want Kita to know about that. I wanted to surprise her.
Sorry. My bad.
No, it's
Yeah.
it's
I think-
fine. It's just that it's harder to get parts. For our American listeners, can you explain how difficult it is to get a firearm and get parts for firearms? The reason I recommended the CZ Shadow 2 is because it's easier to get parts and it's a reliable, good gun. I know that I know you like the Alien, it's just harder to find what you need.
Yes, but you probably advise me on based on US analysis, because in Kenya you don't have too many Shadow 2. We have shadows, but we don't have too many Shadow 2s as well. So that's why I was to that option. And also the double action discouraged me from taking the Shadow 2.
Okay.
Yeah, the double action is something you have to learn. And that thing is like a single action only, basically. So I can understand the appeal. So the way guns are imported is, especially with the aliens, I think they're imported in a batch. There's a batch, and that batch included extra magazines and springs and stuff. But that's it until they import another batch of handguns, and maybe they'll bring in extra spares, which might be a year or 2 years. So the thing about it is they imported quite a few spares, but I think the people that are buying aliens, for the majority of it, are just buying it because it's cool. I know Ibrahim's actually going to shoot his a lot. So he's probably going to be the only one using all the spares that were imported into the continent. But the Shadow 2 double action I mean, it's not something to fear. I've transitioned from a Glock to the Beretta, and I've been able to learn the double action. Sometimes it can still bite me, but I don't respect it and don't pull it straight back to the rear and all of that. But you can get used to it, but it takes a while.
Yeah, I really don't even notice it.
So another factor that forced me to go to alien gun because of we shoot IDP a lot in Kenya as well. We shoot IDP and IPSC. So Shadow 2, it takes me to another class that doesn't have so many participants. I think it's SDP or something. But for alien gun, for alien pistol, because of the weight, it's going to be allowed in SSP division.
Yes.
Okay, that's a consideration that we're thinking about.
Right.
Because you wanted to shoot IDPA as well. And I mean, IDPA is still pretty big in Kenya, right?
Now it's big because we have more than 300 members.
Oh, wow. Okay,
Yeah.
that's it's mainly like the police, law enforcement guys that shoot it, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
IDPA is really interesting how the movement is very different. You do
Limited. Yeah.
the movement you do in IDPA is also done in USPSA and IPSC, but it's much more rare.
Yeah.
You do a lot more of that lean drop step type of thing in IDPA than you would normally. Usually we try to stay away from the drop step in IPSC or USPSA because you're adding a step to your stage in the wrong direction to launch you in the right direction. But in IDPA, you have to be doing that drop step a lot.
Yeah, because of the tight angles.
Yeah, and I have found situations where you can do the crossover step, sort of shooting as you're falling out of position, and then you have to run to another spot. You can do the crossover step there, but it's much more rare doing the crossover in IDPA, I found. It's a lot more stand and shoot, stop and go, stop and go.
It's a more, I shot IDP on Saturday. I got the worst scores of my shooting career. Worst.
Oh, the worst.
Oh, the worst. Oh.
Yeah. I still won in my division. I was global winner in my division, but I won by time.
Well, that's pretty interesting because I mean, even at your worst, or what you consider your worst, you're still winning. So I mean, Kira does this in a train smart class where it's the bubbles. I don't know what you call that again.
Oh, the performance bubble.
Yes, the performance bubble. So even though you're at your worst, your performance bubble is so much higher than your competitors that you're still going to beat them.
Yeah, you have such a margin that you can make mistakes and still win.
Yeah.
We don't want to make mistakes. We want to be perfect and shoot our best match ever. But unfortunately, things do happen.
Yeah.
I've seen USPSA shooters go and shoot IDPA and they don't know the rules or anything, and they just accept all the penalties and they still win because they're just so much faster. Dropping mags on the ground with ammo in them and everything. They're not retaining. And they're still winning, even with the penalties.
Shooting near to far.
Right, exactly. That's another one. Oh, and when I shot an IDP match, I hadn't read the rule book, and I thought that I thought that disappearing targets were no penalty mics, so I didn't even engage it. And it turns out in IDPA, it's penalized.
Yeah, I think you have to activate fast.
Yeah, I activated it, but I did not engage the target because in USPSA, you don't have to.
You don't have to,
No, there's no penalty if you don't engage it. But in IDPA, I found out there is a penalty.
Yes. The good thing about IDPA is that once you have engaged the required number of shots to the target, if it's too difficult, you can run forward and engage the target to a closer distance. But I realize when you shoot IPSC, when you go to IDPA, you shoot IDPA faster. You are quicker. But when you shoot IDP and then you come to IPSC, you shoot through. You can't shoot with speed.
Yeah, you have to really learn the speed.
Yeah, IDP slows you down to IPSC.
Yeah, I think it's a lot easier to go to IDPA if you learn all the rules. To be successful. I think coming from IDPA, it's harder to be successful just because it's a totally different game. The scoring system is totally different.
Yes, because there's no hit factor. Once you get a fight down, it's added to your time.
Right.
Yeah,
time
and sometimes
was.
it's better to spend like 0.3 of a second to shoot a 0 down instead of shooting 1 down.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, you really have to get your hits.
you have to get your hit. Yeah.
Well, are there any companies you'd like to give a shout out to, show some support to, or anything we didn't bring up that you wanted to talk about?
I have one last question. When do you determine that? Okay, I know the answer is going to be it depends, but I'm gonna ask, what's the boundary when you have to shoot on move and you see a target, say this one I'm going to shoot on move, this one I'm not going to shoot on move?
Deciding whether or not to shoot it on the move?
Yes.
You know that from your practice. It's what you
Yeah.
can do consistently every time. If you can do it
Yeah.
10 times in a row in practice, then you can do it in a match.
Yeah.
You have to be able to be successful at it on command, under time pressure. And you know this from your practice, what that target difficulty is for you, for your skill level. So your skill level is a bar that's always moving because you're practicing, you're getting better. So this is something you constantly have to be testing. So you can set a target at 10 yards and say, okay, can I shoot this on the move? Now maybe at a no shoot or hard cover. Okay, can I shoot this on the move? Can I do it 10 times in a row? Did it feel easy or was it really challenging? So it's just based on what you can do in practice and then continuing to push that envelope, push it out farther, make it more difficult, and still try to move on it.
I think that is the best way to look at it. I think as you get to the higher echelons of the competition, you kind of also see, okay, well, this is a risk that I might need to take to actually win this stage. So that's also like, are you ahead or are you behind on points? If you're behind, you might want to take a risk like that. That'll guarantee a win. That's also a way to look at that. If you're cruising, then maybe it's not worth it. Maybe just stop on it and shoot good hits and mitigate the loss of points. But if you are kind of fighting for top position, which I think you're about to do, Ibrahim, to everyone in South Africa, maybe it's worth taking some risks like that. And if you connect, you'll win the stage. You might win the stage. Yeah, it depends.
Right.
If you
want to be taking calculated risks. If you don't take any risks at all, you're already behind. Of course, you want to have a consistent match. Consistency wins the match. Winning stages doesn't win the match necessarily.
Yeah.
So yeah, you do have to take some risks, but you need to know what you can execute every single time.
That's what I've been doing. You find that I shoot one stage, I win by about 3 above the other guys in terms of hit factor. Then when I go to the next stage, I lose by 2.
Well, here's another thing. If the guy you're going head to head with takes a risk and hooks up, now you don't have a choice. You have to take the risk too.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Grant?
Yeah, it's basically, I mean, it's hard. This is where like shooting first and shooting last kind of comes into play. Like if you shoot first and you see a risk and you don't take it, you might have left the door open for your competitor to take the risk. But if you take the risk and you don't connect and you lower your hit factor by 2 and he just basically shoots consistently and beats you maybe by a half a hit factor or 1 hit factor, then he may have beaten you, but it still wasn't as much as it could have been if he had taken the risk as well. So you got to kind of see what your competition is doing and kind of gauge your response to a stage based on that.
The guy that won production in February match in Polokwane, he won by taking risk. He
took a lot of risks, but also, I mean, he had to take those risks because I mean, you saw his first day. He was not having a good match. He was
the
not
first and
having a
second
good
stage.
match.
Yeah.
He actually, I mean, out of the gates, he was having problems. So he took all those risks thinking, well, I'm probably going to lose if I don't take these risks. So now I have to. And he took all of them and he connected on all of them. He's a very, very magnificent shooter to watch. And he didn't win by much, but it was enough of a chance that he actually did pull out a win ahead of all of us. So sometimes you get to the point of the match where it's just like, okay, well, I'm probably going to come third or fourth if I just shoot consistently. Now I'm just going to take all the risks, and if I connect, I'll win, and if I don't connect, I'll come fifth or sixth. That's kind of how the match goes sometimes.
Yeah, and you were in an unusual situation, Grant, where you had just changed platforms. So for you, it was more about being consistent to even make top 5.
I was still learning a new gun at that stage.
That's when it's tough to take some of those risks, when you're just trying to make sure you're gripping your gun properly and drawing it properly, and you're almost back to basically fundamentals again.
Well, that's why I hated the December Nationals so much, because I'd never shot my gun out past 20 meters, and now we've got 35-meter poppers, and I'm just like, well, first of all, this isn't fun, and second of all, I don't even know where my gun hits at that distance, so let's try and see.
But yeah, I think you made the right choice with having just switched platforms to just be consistent. I mean, if you had taken risks, I have a feeling the wheels might have fallen off a little bit, just
probably
from the lack of exposure to that particular firearm.
Yeah, I noticed the Grant is not a risk taker.
No, I shoot very consistently.
Yeah.
And I need to actually start taking more risks, because quite frankly, the shooting consistently is not, it'll get me in the top 5 guaranteed, but it's not going to guarantee me the win. Right.
Yeah, if you don't take any risks, you've already lost.
Yeah.
So if you are starting from the right side, there are 2 targets with no shoots that are visible. And then there's 1 target.
Oh, you have to take that from the back. Yeah.
Yeah.
And probably that steel as well.
The far target on the barrel and the popper, the IPSC popper, you have to take them from that
from
position.
The rear.
Yeah.
Yes. And then there are 2 IPSC target and 1 no shoot. So is it wise to start with the far target and then you back off with the with the target with the no shoot?
If it was set up again, it might not be this way on the ground, but if it's set up like that, I would start on the farther ones. You can start shifting out of position. Maybe not necessarily shooting on the move, because you probably won't have far to go, but at least shifting your way out on the closer ones. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and just make sure you don't cant your gun when you're aiming at those, because you're going to probably have to lean around the barricade.
Yeah,
it does appear that way. Yeah, and again, you're not going to know until you see it on the ground.
The reason I'd start on the far one, sorry, just one more thing. The reason I start on the far one is I want that to kind of dictate when I can leave. If you try, because if you go on the closer ones, you're going to go fast on them. Then you're going to try and go fast on the further ones just naturally.
On the same speed. Yeah,
and it's not going to work. So,
but I realized double action guys, they start with the near target.
That's just a confidence thing. That's a lack of confidence in their ability to hit far targets with double action, because they never practice that.
Yeah, and I think doing something like distance change up or accelerator, that's really good for switching gears. You shouldn't be shooting every target at the same pace. The close ones are attack targets, the far ones are control targets.
Yeah,
and exactly. I didn't make that up. That's JJ Rukaza.
Shout out to JJ.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Ibrahim.
Yeah,
Ibrahim, it was good chatting with you, and look forward to training with you more.
Thank you. See you in October.
I'll see you in
Would be great.
October.
Yes, and I'll see
Thank
you in Kenya.
Yeah, see you in February.
Yes,
In
that'll be
Feb-
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Um,
Cool beans.
Cheerio.
Cheerio.